Hello everybody, I am your host Wade, this is the Dragon's Lair, and once again today we are talking about Warhammer 40k. I'm still talking about the Tyranids. I do plan on going through some of my other armies, what I do, what I use, what I think. I have a lot of points in Necrons, and I have a lot of points in Guard. And man, the cool stuff I see coming out for Guard, I'm going to be right at the head of that because I got a lot of points for Guard. I was really excited for Leagues of Votann. I'm less now. Just seeing how everything came out. They got some really good stuff. I've seen some cool battle reports with how their Magna rifles work and stuff like that. I'm not there. I am seeking a kind of a gunline army. I don't want to do Tau. Even though I do really like robot suits. I really like robot suits. If I ever did Tau, I would just do a ton of robot suits. I'm kind of thinking about Sisters at the moment with Repentia. I just like robot suits. That's it. That's it. Anyways, so we're talking about Tyranids again today. So if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my other videos about my walk rant and my fly rant. So for me, with my walk rant, I get my Daka on with the Shard Gullet, chug, chug, chug. With my fly rant, I get my murder on with my Reaper of Obliterex. Get your murder on. Today we're going to talk about my Neurothrope, who is my favorite. If I could choose, I would make him like the leader of my army. And in the fluff and the story of my army, he is the leader of my army. So once again, my Hive Fleet is Hive Fleet Cerebrus, so it's like Cerebrum and the mythical creature Cerberus, the three-headed dog, smashed together. I've always played Super Psychic with my Tyranids ever since that was an option. Ever since that was a thing. I've always played Super Psychic. I love it to death. People hate it. And my good friend Justin's Word Bearers is the only thing that's ever stood up to it. The psychic part of my army, at least. So anyways, today we're talking about my favorite HQ choice. This is probably going to be the last HQ video. I might throw Old One Eye a bone and do a honorable mention video for him because I love Old One Eye. I love the model. I love the fluff, like the half blown off face from the guy who put the plasma pistol in his eye. I love that. I love that. He just gets melted. Every time I put it on the board, melted. And it doesn't matter if I character protect him with other Carnifexes or what, melted. So I just have a hard time with it. I love him. I don't play him. I have one. I love how I modeled mine. I don't play him. Maybe I'll muck around with it a little bit. But today we're going to talk about the Neurothrope. So here is my Neurothrope. Once again, jungle bugs, spots. So that's my Neurothrope. Let's talk about it. So I gotta start off with the stat line. Looking at this, movement 6. Okay, 6, not great. Remember, he flies. That's what you got to remember. So he's hopping up on top of buildings and stuff. Third level buildings are harder to get to than second level buildings. So third level buildings, fourth, fifth level buildings, if you got them, make him fly. It will make your world a better place. Weapon skill 3, if you notice, I didn't even model the little gribbly arms on him. I didn't even put the little gribbly arms on him. They're not even there. Because a weapon skill on a Neurothrope is silly. Same thing with ballistic skill. They got him in there for a reason. I'm sure there's a circumstance that it'll come up with, but whatever. Strength 5, once again, doesn't really matter. Tough 5 is not bad. You know, it's decent enough. Wounds 6, that's really good. Wound 6 is really good. Tough 5 will save you from a lot of things. Wound 6, really good. 2 attacks, who cares? Leadership 10, nobody cares. He's Synapse. 5+ save, nobody cares because come down to the warp field, 3+ invulnerable save. He's got the best invulnerable save in our whole army. Because if you remember, Zonothropes went up to 4 when we got our new codex. Still invulnerable, still good. I still make a ton of 4+s, but not as great as they used to be. So remember, he is Synapse, so that's a bubble around him of anyone that is 6 inches automatically passes the leadership. Shadow in the Warp is 18 inches, and go look it up. You do not have to have line of sight or line of effect. You just got to be within 18 inches. I psychically sense that you're doing psychic mumbo jumbo, and I say knock it off. Because Neurothropes are good at saying knock it off. We'll get into that though. Remember, the 5th of November. Psionic Node. Add 1 to psychic tests taken. That's so good. 2d6 plus 1. You're going to get your 7 casts. You're going to hit them. And it's not a guarantee, but you're going to hit your 7 casts. That just makes it easier. Spirit Leech is good. I forget about Spirit Leech because it's usually turn 3 before Spirit Leech is important for me. So in your psychic phase, each time an enemy unit within 18 inches of this model suffers a mortal wound, select one friendly High Fleet Neurothrope or High Fleet Zonothrope model within 12 inches of this model. That model regains 1 wound to a maximum of 3 regained wounds per phase. Per phase. Keep that in mind. We already talked about the Psychic Node. And then Warp Siphon. In your command phase, select one friendly Hive Fleet Psyker unit with a synaptic link range. So that's within 12 inches of the Psyker. So if you have 2 Psykers 11 inches apart, they're in synaptic link range. Of this model that has not already been selected for this ability this turn until the start of your next command phase. Each time a psychic test is taken for that unit, roll 1 additional d6 and discard 1 of the dice. This is so good. So good. I use it all the time. I use it every turn. I maximize my use out of it. It makes Psychic easy. It makes Psychic so crazy reliable. This is so good. I would say, okay, so because this is important and kind of modifies the things that we just talked about, I'm going to go into Relic Choice and Warlord Trait. So, once again, watch my other videos, and you'll see that I run a Fly Rant and a Walk Rant, and then this Neurothrope. So usually what I do, because now with Unique Organism, if you have a Tyrant on the field, he has to be your Warlord. And when the Codex came out, Unique Organism was all about you can only have one Warlord per detachment. So usually I'm doing a patrol or a brigade. It's usually a patrol. A patrol or a brigade with a Neurothrope and a Walk Rant. And then the Walk Rant is my Warlord. He holds middle field with some Tyrant Guard. And then I take an auxiliary detachment, and it's just my Fly Rant. If I'm playing a really big game, then I'll do 2 patrols, pretty much. All Cerebrus, which is actually really Leviathan. My rules are Leviathan rules. So let's talk about Leviathan. I know that we are going to talk about Warlord traits and relics, but let's talk about Leviathan. I know everybody's sick of Leviathan. Go back and watch my Tyrant videos. It fits my story. And I likes it. Okay? So, the 2 big things out of Leviathan. One is Synaptic Control. So anything that is a Synapse unit basically has Transhuman, which means that you can't wound it on a 1 to 3. You got to roll. Your opponent has to roll a 4, 5, or 6 to wound it. That's big because if somebody is using a high power weapon on something like your Neurothrope, it kind of negates it. So it forces people to use mid-grade or low-grade weapons on you to try to be effective. And there's plenty of that on the field, but in turn 3, when its pickings are kind of slim, that's kind of where it shines. Also saves things from getting nuked by, I don't know, volcano lances, Justin. Anyways. If you're a Psyker, you have full Transhuman, which is you can only be wounded on a 4, 5, or 6. If you are within 6 inches, so basically Synapse range, if you're within 6 inches of a Psyker, it's baby Transhuman. You can only be wounded, you cannot be wounded on a 1 or a 2. Which, that comes in handy for Gaunts. You want that for your Gaunts. So keep that in mind. I hyper adapt to Unstoppable Swarm, which means their movement, whether it is move, advance, or charge, is not hindered by any sort of terrain. It's amazing. I love it. It's great. People will spend you know, you and your friend, you're setting up terrain, and it's, you know, it's a chess game because I'm going to put this terrain over there, and he's going to put this terrain over here. And the whole time your opponent is thinking about, and then I'll stop charge with this crater, and then I'll put up this fence here and this gate. None of that matters. Look right into my eye. None of that matters with Unstoppable Swarm. It's crazy good. Use it on your friends. Use it on your enemies, but use it on your friends. It's very good. I know, Wade White talking so much about Unstoppable Swarm, the Neurothrope flies, which is great. Remember that the Neurothrope flies. This is an example of a benefit that's really not going to help him out very much. But still, it's good. I use it. Feel free to use it. And I'm sure everyone out there in the world is sick of it. But it's not your fault. Games Workshop gave us this codex. You're just using what your army does and does well. And it's so cinematic too. To watching Gaunts like leap over walls and stuff and fences and watching them just charge through buildings. It's great. It's great. Run a Gaunt carpet sometime with it. You'll love yourself. Okay, so now backing up to do Warlord traits and relics. So relics. I love the Resonance Barb. It's the Super Psychic Warlord. Or sorry, it's the Super Psychic relic. And I love Super Psychic Nids. I love Super Psychic Neurothrope. Anyways, what's good about the Barb is that it gives you an additional +1 to your tests, your psychic tests. So that means, don't forget about your node, that means you're walking around with all of your psychic tests at +2. And, where you at, Barb? I wrote down some notes on it, but anyways, it gives you the knowledge of 1 more power. So that means your, right there it is. That means your Neurothrope is walking around knowing 4 powers, because you're going to get Smite for free. Okay, you then know 2 other powers right there under Psyker, and then the Bard gives you knowledge of 1 more. Okay, so that's really good. +2 to all your tests. Super good. Warlord trait. What I love for Warlord trait is Synaptic Tendrils, because it lets you use Warp Siphon 1 more time. So my normal thing to do is use Warp Siphon on both of my Tyrants. So my Tyrants can get their buffs, so that my Flyrant can make contact with somebody, reach out and touch someone, get his murder on, so that my Walkrant can buff his Tyrant Guard, and get his DACA on, and that's usually good for the first 2 turns. So the thing with Neurothropes is that, in my opinion, they shine on turn 3 and turn 4. They're good all the time. They're good all the time. But let's just be honest. To get within the psychic range, you're basically going to have to advance on your first turn. Many situations you're going to have to move forward on your first turn, or advance on your first turn. You might get in with an enemy moving in on you. You might get in range to cast something on turn 2, which is good. It's still good. It's not a throwaway by any means. But for me, it's usually turn 3 before he shines. He's useful on turn 2. Turn 3, explodes, shines. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So, let me look at my list here. Talked about all that stuff. Okay. Powers. Powers that I usually pick for him. He's going to know Smite no matter what. I put Psychic Scream on him to pump out the mortal wounds just a little bit more. I put Hive Nexus on him. That is the Leviathan special psychic power. And then, depending, I could take a Neuroparasite. Neuroparasite is best used against an opponent with a low toughness score, because if you're going to cast it on an enemy unit, then you're going to get a d6 roll for every model in that unit. So let's just say it's a 10-man, okay? But here's the thing. You have to beat their toughness, not meet their toughness. Bravo, not Mike. So here's the thing. If you're doing it against Space Marines, let's say it's a 10-man Space Marines, you're going to have to roll 5s or 6s to throw that wound down there. That's not great. That's not... You don't want to rely on 5s or 6s. So for everyone that's out there, some of my advice is for really high-functioning players that you don't really need advice. Maybe I'll give you an idea that you never thought of. But some of my advice is for people who are brand new or just getting in. So if you're brand new and you're just getting in, let me tell you this. Part of Warhammer 40k, enjoying yourself, having a good time, and playing well. Because my aim is to play well. I don't have to win every time. I get beat all the time. My friends are really good players. Like, sometimes I have a bad day. Sometimes I make bad decisions. Sometimes my dice rolls against me. Sometimes I don't get first turn. Sometimes blah, 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 blah. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong. But let me tell you this. One thing that you need to do, if you want to do well, and usually having fun and doing well goes hand in hand. Usually, not always. But anyways, if you want to do well, you need to defeat your dice. You need to put yourself in a situation where all I have to do is roll a 3. All I have to do is roll a 2. Those are pretty easy. When you start to get to 4, it's kind of sketchy. When you start to get to 5 and 6, you should not count on having to roll a 5 or 6. For this unit to be successful, all I have to do is roll a 5 or a 6. You're not going to be successful. It's just not going to happen. Unless your dice are on fire, it's just not going to happen. Count on 3s. Put yourself in a position 3s. If you can put yourself in a position where all I have to do is roll a 2, go for it. Jump down that elevator shaft and go for it. You will love yourself. You will be a happy person. Counting on 4s is rough. Counting on 3s is kind of where you want to be. You want to shoot for it. And if you can count on 2s, go for 2s. It's super rare that you get in a position where you count on 1s. It's super rare. That's why I haven't even mentioned it. It's doable, but that's why I haven't even mentioned it. So, back to what I was talking about. Neuroparasite is going to be good if you're fighting orcs, toughness 3. Imperial Guard, toughness 3. Tau Fire Warriors, toughness 3. I've seen Neuroparasite shred Fire Warriors. I don't know much about Eldar stats off the top of my head, but I can't imagine their toughness would be great. But it's not going to work great against Chaos Marines. It's not going to work against the Marines. It's just not going to do it. Chaos Astrate or Heretic Astrate. It's not going to work on them. So if you have the opportunity to assemble your psychic powers after you know what army you're playing, that kind of is going to help you with Neuroparasite. Or not Neuroparasite. A good substitution for Neuroparasite is Paroxysm. Because Paroxysm makes people fight last. And in my Winged Hive Tyrant video, I forgot to mention that I am now taking Paroxysm on my Winged Hive Tyrant. So Catalyst and Paroxysm. Because whoever I'm going to charge, I peroxize them with Paroxysm, and make them fight last. So yeah, I already have Fight First because of Heightened Senses, but I make them fight last. It's such an important skill to make someone fight last, or ability is to make someone fight last. So keep that in your arsenal. Also, keep in mind your synaptic link range. Your SLR, as I like to call it, is 12 inches. So if 2 Psykers are within 11 inches of each other, or 11.5 inches of each other, you're in synaptic link range, and then you can bounce. 3 inches up to this guy, 11 inches over to that guy, 5 inches up to that guy. Oh, another Psyker. Okay, we're all in. Okay, keep that in mind, because a lot of powers, it gives either a synaptic link range and then a range, or just synaptic link range. Keep your eyes on that. Don't forget. All right. So, anyways, another thing that's important to remember. He has 2 casts, which is great. You can cast 2 different psychic powers. Amazing. He has 2 denies. That's not normal. 2 denies is something that's easy to forget. So I'm just throwing that warning out there. Don't forget the 2 denies. Psychic Node and the Resonance Barb, +2 to all his tests. 2 denies. That's important. Okay, so like I said, Resonance Barb knows an extra power, +1 to his casts. Chain that up with the Psychic Node. Warp Siphon, so I put Synaptic Tendrils, so I can use a Warp Siphon twice. I put them on both my Tyrants to start with. Round 1, round 2 to start with. Okay, so speaking of round 1, round 2, let's talk about Synaptic Imperative. So Synaptic Imperative is going to give everybody that's a Synapse unit, a Psyker, a +1 to their tests. It also gives them a +1 to their deny. Okay, and then everyone who is a Psyker gets the 5+ Feel No Pain against mortal wounds. So it's useful, but not super useful. That means on that turn, the Neurothrope has a +3 to his tests. That's pretty hot. The Tyrants are going to get +1. The Zonothropes are going to be, if it's a full strength unit of Zonothropes, the Zonothropes are going to be clocking in at a +4 to their cast. When they cast Smite, because if your Zonothropes are not casting Smite, you're doing it wrong. I love you. I'm sorry that I'm talking to you that way, but you're doing it wrong. I'm trying to help you play good. I'm trying to help you play well, the best that you can. Your Zonothropes need to be spamming Smite. Spam, spam, spam. You can do other stuff with them. You can do psychic actions. You can throw another power here or there if it helps you win the game. If it's going to give you victory points, or if it's going to help you have a good time or have fun. Because let's place it. Let's face it. We're here to have a good time. We're here to have fun. I'm just also assuming that having a good time means doing well. Maybe you don't win, but doing well. That's my goal. Have a good time and to do well. No one wants to get tabled on turn 1 or turn 2. Nobody wants to get tabled. Anyways, so I've been talking about turn 3 a lot, okay? So Psychic Imperatives. A lot of people are using the Zonothrope Psychic Imperative, the Warp Shielding. It gives everybody, it gives all monsters a 4+ invulnerable save for that whole battle round, and it gives all non-monsters a 5+. 5+ is kind of sucky, but the 4+ will save you if you don't get first turn. Second turn, I'll be honest with you, I either put in the Warriors Goaded to Slaughter, which means any 6s that they get, I believe it's 6s Explode. It's either 6s Explode or 6s Auto Wound. I think it's 6s Explode. It all depends. If I have really fast gaunts, maybe turn 2 is when I get the charges, and my 30-man gaunt squad or my 20-man gaunt squad, it's going to be a crap load of attacks. You're going to want those exploding 6s. But I try to save Goaded to Slaughter for the turn where I crash, where I'm going to have multiple units charge. Excuse me. That's the turn I use Goaded to Slaughter. The Tyrant Imperative, where you get to fall back and then charge again, that's kind of my gimme placeholder. So if I'm not going to crash until turn 3, then I use the Hive Tyrants on turn 2. Sometimes I don't use Warp Shielding on the first turn. Like if I go first, sometimes I do. It's always about the punchback. You know what I mean? It's always about the punchback. So I use Warp Shielding on the turn that I reveal myself. So when I deploy behind buildings, I deploy inside of stuff, I deploy where you can't shoot me in case you get turn 1. So Warp Shielding is for the turn that I emerge, where, oh crap, I see him, he's coming out from the buildings, okay? Then Goaded to Slaughter is on the turn where I crash. So the turn that I have multiple units make it into melee combat. Sometimes that's just Warriors and a Tyrant. Sometimes that's Gaunt Warriors Tyrant. It all depends. Anyways, we're talking about the Neurothrope. So his imperative I use on the turn after I crash. So I've got this strategy all worked out in my head already about what turn and under what circumstances I'm going to use my Psychic Imperatives. So the reason why after the crash is important is because if on turn 1, let's say you go second, all you do is move up and shoot. My Warriors are going to have Death Spitters. I'm going to have a Shard Gullet in my Tyrant. I run Rupture Cannons on Tyrannifexes, and I run Exocrines. My turn 1, I'm going to advance on you and I'm going to shoot. My turn 2, if I crash, let's just say I crash, that means multiple units, ideally 3, if not more. If I crash on you on turn 2, that's Goaded to Slaughter with the Warriors. That means the next turn I want to have my Zonothropes and my Neurothrope have moved up. So if turn 1 I move and shoot, the Zonothropes and the Neurothrope, all they do is advance. They move up, they get in position. Turn 2, if I crash, the Zonothropes are probably still getting in position. Maybe a couple of them you can torch off some smites. If you can torch off some smites the same turn that you crash, more power to you. Sometimes that's just not in the cards. Anyways, turn 3, this is all under if-then scenarios. But turn 3, you should be in position behind your melee units that crashed. So that kind of puts your Zonothropes and your Neurothrope midfield, which means they're kind of hanging out with the Tyrant. I hang at midfield. Unless there's something super important in the backfield, but if there's something super important in the backfield, I'll put an Exocrine on it, or I'll put a Tyrannofex on it. Because 48 inches with the Rupture Cannon, 36 inches with the Bioplasmic Cannon on the Exocrine. You know, people are going to drop stuff in your backfield, and then you just turn and vomit on it with an Exocrine and watch it melt. Because odds are those things that they're dropping are infantry, and if they're jetpack infantry are traditionally not super tough. Probably T5, T4, and a Strength 8 Exocrine Bioplasmic Cannon is going to make it go bye-bye. It's at the very least going to hurt it. But then, point is, your Zonothropes can turn around and then back it up and Psychic it. So it's strong. I hang out midfield. I move up, I hang out midfield. I've said all that so that on turn 3, when you're using the Neurothrope's Psychic Imperative, you can pump out the damage, okay? So let's say you've got 2 units of Zonothropes. You're going to want to put the Neurothrope with something that can character protect it. I put it with Zonothropes because they also fly, so they all jump up in a building together for me. Zonothropes still have that 4+ invulnerable save, so that's really good. I hide my Neurothrope right in with my Zonothropes, like he's mingling amongst his minions. That's what I do with it, okay? I know that my Neurothrope does not have tendrils, but come on, everything that's a Tyranid has tendrils somewhere. Anyways, so then you're locked in melee combat with 3 different units that say somewhere in midfield or just up midfield. And then you're going to have your Fly Rant. I'm going to have my Fly Rant murdering something. Just murdering something. I'm going to have my Tyrant and his guard murdering something, if not tying something up and making something wish it never fought him. And then I'm going to have units of warriors doing good damage with their dual bone swords, strength 8, AP 2, damage 2. Anyways, you got all that going on in front of you. And then you have these Zonothropes in the buildings behind them, smiting down into these combats. Because you can smite people who are locked in combat. You can Psychic into your own combat on the Psychic phase, and then you can Psychic into other people's combats, or other combats. That's so important. The most important thing that you have to keep in mind is when a unit smites, you can only smite the closest unit. So if it's the closest unit is the one that just dropped in behind you, you gotta smite them. If the closest unit is the one that it's the combat down in front of you because you're up in a building and it's directly down in front of you, smite into that. Because the more mortal wounds that you can pump into that, that means you finish that combat quicker. And odds are you finish that combat on top because there's not going to be fighting back. There's not going to be as much fighting back. You're going to finish those combats quicker so then you can move on to the next. And if you kill more units, you can get secondary objectives. You can then move on to the next unit to kill. You can grind down your opponent really quickly. That's something that Tyranids would do. They would eat and move on. It's really effective. It works really well. I like it a lot. So once again, I try to light up my Psychic Imperative for the turn after I crash. Sometimes that's turn 3. Sometimes that's turn 4. But that's just the way that it is. It's all about the map, how big it is, where your terrain is, what your obstacles are, how fast your enemy is. There's a lot of things that go into it. But that's kind of a universal. I know I talked a lot about the Psychic Imperative. We know we're Leviathan. Units that you can work with synergize really well. We've already talked about Tyrants. So you want to give the Warp Siphon to 2 different Tyrants. You can do it twice because of your Warlord trait. That makes them super good at Psychic. Also Zonothropes, I already said that. Hide in a unit of Zonothropes. Use the Zonothropes to character protect you. I usually have 2 3-mans out there. And then if one 3-man loses the 3rd man and can no longer character protects, I fly over to the other one. One thing that I forgot to say about the Psychic thing, those 2 units of Zonothropes, assuming they're at full power, so they're 3-mans, assuming that, on turn 3, when they go to roll Smite, they are rolling 2d6 and adding 1. Sorry, they're rolling 2d6 and adding 4 because they're going to get an extra 3 for every Zonothrope in the unit, and then they're going to get a 1 from the Psychic Imperative. So trying to get an 11, because for Super Smite you have to beat 10. You have to get an 11 or a 12. Trying to hit 11 on 2d6 plus 4, super easy. You're going to get the Super Smites, and you're going to melt your enemy. You're going to melt them. You're only going to get plus 3 on the damage, so it'll be a d6 plus 3. But imagine if you get that 5 and you pump 8 mortal wounds into an enemy squad. That's 4 Marines right there. That's for Heretic Astrate right there. That's super good. Super powerful. Do it. Do it, do it, do it. I skipped over that, so anyways, I want to give you that advice. I talked about the powers. Really, the only strategy that I can tell you about to use is Power of the Hive Mind. For 1 CP, you get to cast again. So let's say you cast Psychic Scream. Done. You cast Hive Nexus. Now, here's the thing. Hive Nexus. It's the Leviathan power. Okay, you got to do a 17. I think it's 18 inches. Maybe it's 12 inches, but it's Synaptic Link range. Here's the deal. They changed it. So it used to be you could cast it on anybody. Now you have to cast it on a core unit. And everyone's going to scream and say, oh my gosh, core. Okay? But that still means it's good for warriors. And that still means it's good for Tyrant Guard. Okay? Give the warriors the 5+ invulnerable from the Zonothropes. Give the Tyrant Guard the 5+ invulnerable. Tyrant Guard with Catalyst on, so that's the 5+ feel no pain. With the 5+ invulnerable, they're tough to kill already. They've got a lot of wounds, they've got a high toughness, and then they gotta feel the pain. Then they got invulnerable. They have all this stuff. Okay? Stack that stuff out there. Get your Psychic on. That's what the Neurothrope is good at. That's what he's all about. Do the things that you're good at. Don't fight against the nature of what the Hive Mind has created. Don't make, Gaunts fight a Dreadnought. You can pimp it out so it can happen, but they're not well suited for that situation. Okay, they're great for going up against guardsmen. They're great for going up, against fire warriors and orc boys and all that kind of stuff. Do that. Don't fight against the tide. Another way to say it is watch your matchups. Okay, so elite infantry going against regular infantry. The elite infantry is going to win. Elite infantry should fight either other elite infantry or regular infantry. Watch your matchups. A tank that you put all of the infantry killing guns on shouldn't shoot another tank. Okay, so watch your matchups. So we talked about Neuroparasite, we talked about Hive Nexus. So yeah, with Power of the Hive Mind, which is a 1 CP stratagem, he's on his turn where his Psychic Imperative is, he's getting a +3 to cast. Your Zonothrope should always be casting Smite last. Just because they're going to get the highest bonus. So you should always wait for your Zonothropes to cast them last on your Smite train. But, maybe you Smite and Hive Nexus. Or maybe you Paroxysm and Hive Nexus. And then you cast 1 CP to Power the Hive Mind, make him scream. Psychic Scream. It's a straight up D3. Mortal Wounds. It's good. It's not bad. It's good. And you can do it every turn. Once per psychic phase. Pump it out. Pump it out. Pump it out. So, looking at his keywords. Infantry, which means he can move through buildings. Character, which is why we can give him the Relic and the Warlord trait. Fly. Remember fly. Up and over buildings. Synapse, Psyker. Horned Chitin. Now, I've looked at this quite a bit. He can't use the Horned Chitin stratagem, Trample Charge, because he's not a monster. So I don't know why he's got Horned Chitin. There's got to be something else somewhere. But anyways, I wanted him to headbutt somebody once. And I was just about to do it, and I pulled out the stratagem and read it, and I was like, ah, crap. So anyways, but yeah, he's great. I love him. Like I said, if I could make him, as far as the fluff goes, he is the leader of my army. He is called the Master. So my walk rant is the will, my fly rant is the hunger. I love the Neurothrope. I love brain bugs. I don't have a Malceptor yet. I'm going to get one just to have one. I might use him someday for fun. I don't have points for him on my list right now, but whatever. He's cool. I don't have one. So like I said before, the easiest things, in my opinion, to forget is that he flies, that he has 2 cast, and he has 2 denies, and that you got a character protect him. And like I said, I use other Zonotropes. So my last piece of strategy, this is what we're going to wrap up with, talking about Neurothropes, is I use the Warp Siphon on my 2 Hive Tyrants as much as I possibly can until they're dead. People are going to gun for your Hive Tyrants. That's just the way that it is. So when one Hive Tyrant dies, I either put the Warp Siphon on myself, the Neurothrope, or the squad of Zonothropes best equipped to pump out smites. So if you know, turn 3 comes, you had a pretty decent crash, you did a lot of damage, but both your Tyrants are dead. You still got warriors maybe out there, 2 squads of warriors maybe. I would put the Warp Siphon on my 2 squads of Zonothropes, and just have my 2 squads of Zonothropes rip through people with mortal wounds. Because rolling 3d6, adding 3 to it, is so good. So good. You're going to get your super smites. So just think about that. Think about where you're going to put your Warp Siphons first, and then, you know, what's your secondary once your first choice for Warp Siphon is done. I love them. I love my walk rants. I love my fly rants, and I love my Neurothrope. This video is going to conclude me talking about my HQ choices. I'm going to move on to Elite choices next. We're going to do HQ, Elite, Heavy Support, and then Troops, and then Flyers. I don't have any fast attack right now. I don't believe in it at the moment. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just not using it. Maybe you can convince me. So if you're going to try to convince me about Heavy Support, and don't talk to me about Dimitrodons. I try to like Dimitrodons, but then I look at their stats and I'm like, eh. And then I look at their point cost and I'm like, eh. And then it's a Forge World model, and the rules don't get updated very often. And then I don't like the model. It's got like teeth in its chest and everything. So like I said, I don't like Dimitrodons. Try to sell me on Dimitrodons. Leave me a comment. Wade, you were wrong. Dimitrodons are awesome because. Hopefully this has been useful to you. Like I said, I try to give information for expert players, for people who are really enjoying the hobby, and people who are just getting into the hobby. Maybe you're really enjoying it, but you just got into the hobby. So trying to give you advice for that. I'm in a couple Facebook groups where I try to contribute and answer questions and stuff like that. So odds are you're probably going to watch this video there. Go ahead and watch my other 2 videos about walk rants and fly rants. But like I said, next time I'm going to move on to my elite choices, and I got a bunch of them. We're an elite heavy army, and I think that's awesome. I love that we're an elite heavy army. Hopefully I've given you some good information, maybe something to think about. Maybe I stuck in your craw and you can tell me why you think something different. I'd love to hear it. The Dragon's Lair is all about sharing things that we love, and I love Warhammer 40k. I've been playing Tyranids for over a decade. Tyranids and Necrons for over a decade. And we're in some very exciting times right now. Our new codex is pretty hot. We didn't get Leagues of Votann nerfed, that's for darn sure. Anyways, I love you, Leagues. I love you. Go ahead, drop us a like, give us a comment. Go ahead and put your subscribe button just covered in gaunts, and have 90 gaunts do 360 attacks to the subscribe button, and hopefully that would be enough to actually subscribe to my channel. We'd love to have you. This has been the Dragon's Lair. We understand, my name is Wade, we understand that you are a busy adult with kids and jobs and lives and dogs and friends and significant others and all those sorts of things. The point is, your time is precious, and we understand that. So thank you for spending your time here with us at the Dragonfly.